Hello and welcome to Blakely Interiors show. My name's Stephen and I run Blakely Interiors, and today we have Pete Lawton, and I think maybe some of you might recognise Pete of a recent BBC House of the Year show, and he got to meet the famous Lawrence.
Big Lawrence, yeah. You probably recognise my charming good looks from the show, yeah.
Well, not go that far. It was a charming good looks in the interiors.
Oh yeah, sorry, they were there for the house, not for me. I forgot that. Yeah.
So really, what we're going to talk about today, Pete, is your journey. You know, as a self builder, and where you sort of started, how that all came about, the whole process that you've been through, to culminate on you being on House of the Year.
Yeah. I think it's kind of like a disease that you catch. If I go back a bit, the process started for us probably back in 2015. And as you'll know, I suppose in Northern Ireland we have a lack of stock in terms of housing stock. And, you know, when you have different ideas and different families, etc., you know, we kind of have to, you know, there's certain things you want to get. And the only way we realized quite quickly we get what we wanted was to either we'd have to take what was existing and turn it into what we wanted, or new build, or, you know, something different. So that's really where the journey started from us. And we had a couple of false starts with properties that we sort of tried to buy and fell through for various reasons. And anyway, this particular house, 7 Gloucester Court, came up, and almost immediately it just felt right. So in terms of site, so we were very specific about location. You know, we wanted to be close into Hillsborough Village. We wanted something with a bit of space. So, you know, we knew it was going to be a slightly older property that was maybe a bit tired, but still had the decent site sizes. So by the time we looked at all those combination of factors, then, like I say, the property came up, and you know, right from the start, we knew it was right for us. You know,
So with that property, and you knew that was right for you guys, you know, and I suppose really what has later transpired, you guys weren't at that stage.
Sure.
You know, so during the whole process, then obviously your family expanded.
Yeah, massive expansion through that. You know, our intention initially was just to sort of modernize it and sort of make it a little bit bigger. We had one daughter at the time, and we went through the purchase, and there was a number of things happened during that time as well. There was Brexit, you know, there was local roadworks were happening, and then, you know, so there was a number of things. But yeah, next thing we found out during that process, and we had to go into planning. We were into planning, we had plans, and then next thing you know, we were, Julie was basically going to have twins. So we were going from a family of 1 child to 3 children. And we discovered that the first set of plans wasn't exactly going to satisfy the requirement. So we ended up going back into planning again, which was challenging because the planning department, you know, where it is, it's in a development of 11 houses. The planners wanted it to look similar. So we had those constraints, and then of course at the time with, you know, budgets and, you know, how do you do it and all the rest, all the million questions that came up. But the brief, let's just say we had a bit of scope creep. That's, you know, as someone said to me, it will take twice as long, cost twice as much as you think, and that's possibly the best advice I could give to any self-builder.
It is something we hear all the time. You know, quite often, you know, certainly from my perspective, I'm normally the last one to get the hand into the pot, you know, directly to finish the house. And I'd often talk to clients, look, you know, what we'll do is we'll go through a costing, and you may find that we go beyond your contingency. You know, and that has always been the case, you know, especially with projects that you took on, because as much as we've called it a self-build, it technically started out as a renovation. But I have, you know, I did see the pictures of the 13-ton digger sitting in the middle of the house, only 2 gable walls. So it literally was a rip and strip.
It was right back. And in truth, we probably should have gone all the way. But listen, I think when you're, and this is the one thing, and you know, where, you know, with yourself, it's really strategic, is you get decision fatigue. You know, because there's a million questions, whether it's self-build, new build, any build, even a new house, you know, what color, how does this match, what does that go with, does it match my hair and teeth, you know, like all that, you know, and that's the problem. You get down to the stage of going, God, where do I start, where do I finish, how do I get this, is this ever going to end? And then it feels like this never-ending
of questions.
Yeah.
And I think that is something that I know with working with people building houses or doing renovations. They kind of feel as if they need to know all the answers, and it's almost impossible to know all the answers, and you end up making decisions for decision's sake.
Yeah, expensive.
And they are expensive.
Yeah.
And I know that with the process that you went through with the architect, and then obviously we were lucky enough to meet quite early in those stages. So I was able to look at the plans with you and go, what about this? What about that? And then we were able to push through and actually make you think about it from a totally different perspective, how you were actually living in the space, how that space was going to operate, in the mornings, in the evenings, in the afternoons, and the flow of the space.
Yeah, it's, looking back, I mean, it was so fortuitous to have met you. I mean, and we met you at one of the shows, and like we kind of joke about it and saying, listen, if we hadn't have met you, chances are we would likely have got divorced and sold the property. But it's kind of because we're just different people. I see structure, I can visualize the layouts, I can do all these things, but when it comes to the feel and the all the sort of what I would call the soft fluffy stuff,
easy now.
That's just not me, but that's our relationship. Myself and Julie, we're opposites. I understand structures, walls, cables, wires, all those things, where she's all like the look and the feel and the touch and the what it's gonna, what's sensation and layouts and all that. So it's like, and like reflecting back, it's really like that's why we couldn't agree on things, because she was going, what's it gonna look like, or what color's gonna go on the wall? It's like, I don't really care. Where are we putting the damn wall? Why is the wall here, and why is the door not here, and which way is this swinging, and should there be a plug there? And Julie's just like not getting it. To the point she was like, listen, I don't really care. Do whatever you want. I'm out of here. And it was pretty much at that time we bumped into you at the show, and I think we probably just ranted at you for a while.
Yeah, I got talked at by both of us for two different reasons.
Sounds familiar.
What I found was you weren't dissimilar to lots of couples that I would be dealing with in house builds, and I think that you both have an end goal, but you both have different paths to get there. You both wanted the house finished, but you wanted structural, and Julie obviously wanted looking really well.
Yeah.
And I think that's really where you joke about getting divorced. I do say, yes, I'm an interior designer, I'm a counsellor, I'm a marriage counsellor, and referee, more often than not, and that would surprise you how often that happens.
Well, I've experienced it, so I can totally see that, and I do think there's times when we have things in our head, we maybe just haven't communicated to our partner or to the builder or to whoever, and because of that decision fatigue, everything starts to lock down. Every decision becomes a hard decision because you don't almost have that sort of interior therapist to sort of go, this is what I'm trying to achieve. Here's the end goal. Yeah. Whereas, working with like yourself, you're able to work from that point backwards.
Yeah. Okay.
And the other thing for us, I suppose, rather than just doing it for the sake of doing it, and I suppose we're slightly older and sort of saying, listen, I'm not doing this, and the three things really is it down to cost? Is it down to time, or is it down to quality? And quality was our number one, saying, listen, if it takes a bit longer, if it costs a bit more, do it once and do it right. Yeah. Which is, it is about worth and value. It's not about cost and price.
Well, I think that, I suppose the way I tackle most projects like that is I talk about a choice triangle. And most people, if you imagine that triangle on its side, at the very base of that triangle, you have a world of choice.
Yep.
And then once you actually start making decisions, you take a step forward to try to get to the point of that triangle. But what happens every time you make a decision? You take a step forward, what happens to your choice? It gets less.
Yep.
And what then happens, I see it all the time, is that people make a decision, and end up somewhere totally different to what their vision was.
Yeah.
So what I did with you guys was I tried to get you to think about the fluffy stuff, and talk about the flow and how each room is going to work into the next room.
Yeah.
How are we going to dress the windows? That big window at the back of your property. So we get to talk about things like that, and then that's our goal. And you obviously understood that. So we had our goals, so then we had to establish a path. How do we get to that? So we literally dissected everything. And I think that's then where it all started to come together for you guys.
Absolutely. And it sort of broke it down, not only as was being able to visualize it, when you are sort of looking at the likes of curtains, or you're looking at, the chairs, the layouts, and even ask a better question. It's like, Christmas dinner, how do you want Christmas dinner to look and feel and all the rest? And for us, it was always about having a big table and everyone sitting at the table, and the kitchen was part of that. So it's not like someone goes, cooks the dinner and comes back. We wanted to have it there, and you can retire to so that whole going from that direction, as opposed to going, let's put lines on a page and then make our life work around it. Let's go the other way. What do we want this to look and feel like, and operate as a home? I know it's a house, but it's like, as a home, what do I want to feel about this house? And it's like, I want to feel good. I want to feel that we can, throw the doors open for parties. We can have a family dinner. We can have, turkey on the table. We can do all these things, and it works with us, as opposed to, oh, well, the architect put the wall there, so this is forever the way it's going to be.
We did have a lot of those discussions, and certainly, on paper, we were moving a lot of walls to get that space right. And obviously working on the property that you were working on, you did have the restrictions, but I think at the end result, well, obviously it made it to House of the Year,
For a lot of people, they only do this, once, maybe in their lives, maybe twice, maybe more, but, why would you not have someone on your team that does this all the time? This is the thing, so is it any wonder, we struggle to make decisions? Because it's like, because I'm not doing it every day. I'm not, it's not necessarily something I'm used to doing, or I don't understand the impact, or I don't understand how ultimately the floor is going to tie in with the curtains, will tie in with the pictures, will tie in with the paint, and it's like, at the time you just go and just get paint on the walls. I don't really care, it's like,
I think it's working to your build schedule. And that build schedule obviously creeps on you very, very fast, and you will get a phone call, or you will be asked face to face, what colour we're painting this, or where those sockets going. And you understand, we went through all that, and those are massive decisions that people tend not to think about. And I see it all the time, especially whenever the house is built. And then people come to us, to obviously avail of interior design services. And what we find is you have a big room, but you have double doors into that room. In the middle of the only wall that you could put a sofa. And the wall, or the room, is actually too narrow. To actually let the sofa sit in the middle of the space. So it just that one decision just reconfigures that entire room. And removes focus from fireplace, TV, or whatever the case may be.
I do, and I've so said this before, and I said it on the show, but I don't know if it's included. It's, for me, an interior designer is the one that sort of takes it from a house to a home. Interior designers typically, architects are typically, what's the look outside? Which way is it orientated? And don't get me wrong, it is incredibly important. But then after a while, you sort of go, but how is it going to operate as a space? Even still, we see plans, like we have, super king beds, right? I'm quite tall, and it's something we always have as a family, to get the whole family into one bed. Plans don't come with super king. It's like a normal standard size double on it. And then you look at it and go, oh, that's a really big room. And then you try and put the super king bed in the room, and suddenly you realize, I don't even have room for side tables. It's wee things like that, which, has somebody actually sat down and gone, here's the realities of life. Where are you going to dump your washing? Where's the bed go? Can you do this? Are the kids going to hide here? Could we put a wardrobe there? And I don't know that, again, this is not to bash architects, but I don't know that they necessarily take it that far, whereas the likes of yourself allows you to have that conversation. And it's a hell of a lot cheaper to move a wall on paper than it is in reality.
Because I do recall having conversations about having a main bathroom or having 2 en suites. And I know that was a little bit of a sticky one, but you
Yeah.
can see it makes perfect sense,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
And again, you know, some of the seminars that I would do, you know, and just talking about interior design and certainly self builds, you know, I would say that because the architect is the first professional that you're actually getting involved with, it sort of sticks at that, you
Yeah.
know, and you don't actually lift your head above the parapet. You're putting all your faith in what the architect is doing. And I would talk about the architect. Yes, I appreciate what is being done there,
Yeah.
but you know, their remit is to give you a house which has plenty of light, free-flowing space and looks fantastic from a couple of fields away. And my job is to make that your home. So really, I would want to be involved as early as I can, certainly at that planning stage when a set of plans have been drawn, which architect knows is going to, you know, fit the plot and working off the brief that you've given. But you know, we changed a lot on your plans.
Well, do you know what? When I do it again, and I will, I don't know about Julie, but I would probably actually have you involved before the architect.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's in terms of almost what's your why? What's your point in doing this? You know, because so my next house will be, you know, it's something, it's different, but I want it to be something that just makes sense. It just, everything has, you know, everything is, what does it say? Everything has a place and a place for everything. And it's that thing as opposed to going, oh, we developed something on site that, you know, the architect, you can see their style, the planners were okay with it and the neighbors didn't object to it. And it's like, but if you had a thought about this could have gone from good to wow, to amazing. And that might take a bit more time. It might take a bit more money. It might take a bit more just quality and getting people involved. But, you know, getting that vision set up at the start and kind of going, you know, any self-build's going to take 2 years to come to light, really. And then you've got to live with it for 20, 30 years maybe.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, why not spend that time in terms of getting it right? What's the flow? You know, even simple things like how do you unload your shopping? You know, do you put in a laundry chute? You know, where do you go for your morning coffee and all these things? And unfortunately, with people, if that's outside of their control, none of that goes in. You know, you adjust your life according to what the house has been laid out like.
Yeah. I think I'd like you to come work for me, Pete.
Absolutely,
You know, because you're literally preaching to the converted here.
Yeah.
But you know, I think that, you know, you've really took on board everything that we talked
Absolutely, yeah.
about. And I suppose really the key thing for us is whenever we were looking at the plan and sort of trying to work out how you guys would actually live in that space, you know, the whole thing evolved.
Yeah.
You know, from what was there to what is there now. And I know that, you know, certainly with the house finished, you know, the kitchen, you know, the design of the kitchen, a simple thing, we put up that wee false wall so that our curtain would go right in behind, so because we didn't have the space with the window.
Yeah.
And the small things like that you can make a decision on paper, but people don't see it. The architect won't see it because he's going, there's a window, shove it in there. It doesn't realise that the cabinetry's coming out 600.
Well, that's I mean, that conversation, I mean, I remember it well of like, where do you put 8 meters of curtains, you know, and whatever that bunches up to, you know, and they're like, well, and then right enough, oh yeah, that can't go beside the cooker. It can't go beside the fridge because, you know, it's going to get dirty. And then as you say, well, where does it go? And how do you have it involved but not involved, you know, and as wee things like that, which again, on the next one, we'll be going, no, we'll take it even a step further.
Yeah.
You know, and giving it a bit more thought, whereas a lot of times you're kind of going, we have to kind of, what we have is here, and we now have to make a solution that fits, or maybe doesn't really fit, or we just suck it up.
Yeah, I think you know, the thought processes that we went through, what was really good then, you took that to the next level, you know, in terms of working with the kitchen designer. You know, it was Holly from Straw Hill, you know,
Straw Hill,
and Holly did an absolutely amazing job, and she just got you guys. But I think that one of the things what was highlighted on the show was the pantry, you know, and like I'm going right after everything that's in that house, they go to the blinking pantry, like, you know.
Do you know, I think there's a life lesson in that pantry in so many ways. One, like pre what you saw, it was, I think it's about 1.5 meters wide and 4 meters long. That's it. And it was just a plain room. We had a freestanding fridge freezer was in there, and like IKEA racks.
Yep.
And it was just there, and you kind of going, I'm not sure how we're going to get anything in here. And working with Holly and, saying what's possible. And I was saying, listen, floor to ceiling, let's go, do all this. And I kind of knew it was going to be good. But then one of the last things she sort of said to us, was, we should think about some lighting in here. And we're at that stage where I have enough faith, the knowing, liking, and trusting is built up enough to go, Holly, whatever you think, or asking a better question, saying, what else would work really well in here? And just saying yes to the cabinetry, and saying yes to the lighting, and saying yes to matching the work surfaces all the way through. But don't get me wrong, they are all, the main kitchen itself is painted, what do you call it, in
bone
frame.
black.
Yeah, it's all, in frame, bone black, and all that. When it came to the pantry, we're like, well, how do we cut it down a bit? Now, we chose not to go for a vinyl top. We chose to sort of stick with the marble. But then for all the cabinetry, it's all veneered, laminated.
Stock colour.
Stock colour. So, so ironically, we got high impact on budget pricing. And like, unless you sort of were able to run between the two and really look new to look, you couldn't see that actually it was a lower quality than the main kitchen. And it's just maximized out what was a windowless, boring, nothing room to suddenly being, holy smokes, this is, and I love doing that now with people as ask about a question, going, rather than sort of going, how do I get the cheapest thing? Saying, well, how do I get the best thing?
Yeah.
What would be amazing here? What would bring it amazing value and worth? And then we'll work it backwards whether we can make it work on our cost and price. Because it might be saying, listen, I don't mind. I think the lighting for that was like an extra 1,200 or 1,500 quid, something like that. Worth every penny.
Yeah, I totally agree. And just again, the judges picked up on it as well. And that was a £1,200 to £1,500 decision, which worked extremely well. Yeah. But that wouldn't have happened if you didn't have that trust in Holly. And working through that, what was good was whenever we were able to see the finished product, working with you and working with Julie, I talked to you about the flow of the space and how it was all going to work. So literally from front door to back door, you had that feeling that you were in the home, and that was, taking on that strong colour in the hallway because of the size of the hallway,
I remember that phone call to you when
are you sure this is the right colour of paint?
we had the windows, obviously all the plastering was done and all this, and of course as usual we're like, right, we're on a tight schedule, and we had the house spray painted white top to bottom, just to get the base coats on the wall, and like, listen, let's get everything whited out. That's a good starting point. And it's kind of like, I don't know, I've never been to heaven yet, but when you walk in and it's just like the floor is white, the ceilings are white, the floors are white, and all the windows were still covered up, and you're just like, I may have died. I'm not entirely sure. And then Stephen comes and says, I think we should come and put this colour on the wall. Pheasant, if I remember, pheasant, and at first when Donald's going, ooh, that's dark, and having the phone call with you, and even listen, we went through and we're saying, can we mix up the colours? Can we go for the full paint colours and all this? And a simple thing of working with yourself, we had some mixed up, and it wasn't quite right. But the amazing thing was, and it was your recommendation in terms of saying, get that as a base coat and then top it off with the proper paint, the proper Zoffany paint. Which is perfect, a great compromise, straight away. So I mean, the saving in that conversation alone, because when you're multiplying across the entire house, makes a difference. So you're kind of going, okay, that makes sense. Having the faith of going, listen, it's a dark color and all the rest, but then when you have the vision for the entire building, which I got to be honest, I didn't always have it, but having someone on your team to just hold your hands at the right point and going, just hold.
I think that's where you guys were very good in going, look, we trust you, and it does boil down to that trust, and having faith that well, he has our best interests at heart here, and that was really the vision that I had for that space, because I wanted to walk through that front door and feel as if I was putting an arm around your shoulder and welcoming you in, and I think that that starkness that you had with it all being painted white really highlighted the fact that a light color just doesn't do that. You know, it almost it zaps you.
Yeah.
Where having that strong color, but the other big thing there that worked well for me was because of the architectural work inside and the shape, and then obviously the door frames were all popping off that white, you know, and it actually allowed you to create points of interest between that, you know, and then obviously you were able to work with art and lighting, which made a massive difference.
Yeah, it's sort of, you know, the lighting's an interesting point because I maybe got carried away.
Maybe, yeah. Go ahead, Pete. Tell us how you got carried away.
There might be 147 spotlights in the house.
Who's counting?
I'm counting because I wired them all.
Yeah.
Or helping the electrician to do it. It's like this is a lot of spots. I don't have any regret in going both feet in, you know, and getting involved in the actual installation process, etc. You know, it allowed me to get everything that I wanted without breaking the bank or, you know, looking for, you know, the little opportunities. I think in hindsight, I would maybe lean on you a bit more on that one. Just saying. Don't want to completely fall over and say it, but I think, you know, again, it's part of the process now. I know now I would go so much further with the lighting, more planning. You know, I think we've done an amazing job with what we had. And, you know, certainly went in, you know, everything from picture rail lighting to mood lighting to dimmer controls to all this. It's great, but again, a bit like the lighting in the pantry. Yeah. And, you know, the detail with the likes of yourself is taking it to the next level of saying, right, when we're looking at walls on paper, where's good for artwork? And then do we have, you know, the focus point lighting that will match that? That's the next level, which you won't get with a developer. No. That's the next level you won't get with if you're doing everything on a budget. And sometimes it's kind of going, well, I maybe don't have the budget to do it all now.
Yeah, yeah.
But cable's cheap.
Yeah.
You know, you put the cable in, and we do still have probably, I'd say, half a dozen, maybe more spots in the house where there is just a junction box blanked off. And I know there's a cable there for another set of picture lighting or whatever else, and it will get done. But had we gone with a standard, you know, no plan or with an electrician's plan who just, you know, just throws a load of sockets around the room and you just see the bill adding up, you know, whereas you go the other way and saying, what are we trying to achieve? You know, it's like artwork is, you know, because of Julie's family and their artists. So displaying art in that way, you know, we wanted the walls to be a canvas for the art as opposed to the other way around.
Yeah, totally.
You know, and it's that bit where I know we were brave and we went there, but I kind of almost wish in some way, and I'm giving you permission for the next one to say, make me more uncomfortable, and you know, and take it, which is.
Well, I think that, you know, going through that process, I mean, you had one major objective there, which was you wanted a green house. You know, that's not the color, but you wanted a greenhouse. Yeah. And I think, you know, that was maybe sitting in the background all the time as well for you. Yeah. So you did have a lot on, you know, and that was, and obviously with you being on that and, you know, pushing that, you ended up with a zero carbon.
Yeah. It's. But I come back and saying I genuinely will say, and I've said it several times before, I know what you did for us saved us more money than you cost, right? Straight up, you know, and that's the one thing which is totally counterintuitive. It's like, well, how's that possible? And it's like, well, between looking at paint options, I know that the floor in that's a commercial floor, okay? Which means it's super high grade, but it's commercial price, not retail price.
Yeah.
You know, so straight away there, I know we literally saved about £6,000 on the floor. Yeah. And that's it. And this thing is rock solid, hard wearing, you know, and I didn't want something that was like a laminate for a click or, you know, we couldn't spill water on it. Whereas this thing is like, SPC, stone plastic composite. It's called hardware, and we can dance on it, we can go crazy on it, and it's there, it's consistent, and it was cheaper than all the other alternatives.
Yeah.
You know, ask a better question, you're going to get a better thing, and that then ticked my box in terms of saying it's where design and engineering meets style. You know, and I don't mind saying I don't have a lot of style, but I know what functions I want to do, and then if I'm brave enough to get out of my own way and leave it to the likes of yourself or Julie, my wife, and all these things of saying, listen, I know what works best in terms of where the wall goes. How do we make that bling? How do we take it to the next level? Otherwise, it's just going to be magnolia white and, so the usual carpet. And it's like, it's fine, don't get me wrong, but it's not next level.
That's actually a very good point. There's 2 points there which I would like to touch on. Whenever you're saying about asking a better question, whenever we are looking at the design of a whole house, just because we're designing a whole house doesn't mean that we have to make that whole house be designed and finished all in the one go.
Yeah.
And because people will face fatigue, financial stress, just wanting to look, I've done enough now, can I just take a breather?
Yeah.
So I very often talk about, look, let's phase this in, you call it off whenever you're ready. And I suppose that's really prioritizing. And what I would always talk about is, get all the dirty work out of the way first. So if we are flooring or tiling or having to move walls or putting in lights, that's plan for all that and get all the dirty work out of the way first. And then start prioritizing the room spaces. And ultimately that's kind of what you did, but you were able to push that right through. And also, you talk about saving money. I think really it is, spending £2,000 to save on a £5,000 mistake, and that mantra is something which we would talk about quite a bit. But you were able to experience that firsthand. There's not a lot there in that build that you would go back and go, I wish I had a. Lighting will have a little bit of a waiver on,
maybe,
but there's not a lot there that really you would say, oh, I wish I had a.
There's very little we held back on, and I really can't think of anything where we compromise and saying, we'll go for the cheaper thing or whatever. Did it mean a bit more legwork, more phone calls to you, all the rest? Yeah, but I don't apologize for that because the end result is, we didn't necessarily throw money at it. The solution is saying, no, we just need to ask a better question or find a better way. Which is totally doable for anyone. Fair enough, you can throw money at it, but then it's like, that's not necessarily me. It's like, I enjoyed the process, even though it was chaotic, in terms of just decisions, everything. But, decide what it is for you. And as I come back to and saying, quality was number one. If it took a bit longer, if it cost a bit more, that's fine. We're not 21. I wanted to do something that, one, we were proud of, two, served us as much as it served them. It allowed our family and just the look and feel, and it nurtured us. And uncompromising, I know the times even the builder was sort of saying, do we really want to do this or whatever. I'm saying it's non-negotiable for me. So don't ask me, why, just tell me how you're going to do it.
I think we should actually give a shout out there to Mark and GM Construction, who did an absolutely amazing job.
He put up with me, so I think he deserves the award.
Yeah, and I can totally sympathise with that statement. And so can Julie. But no, they did a great job, and they got it. And what I love about working with Mark was nothing was ever a problem.
Same with yourself. Genuinely, same with yourself in terms of. That's what you want. You don't want someone when you're afraid to have a conversation because it's either going to cost you time or delay, or what are they really thinking, or they, ultimately they're coming out to get me somewhere. This should be, it's almost like that sort of double yoking. It should be a partnership, genuinely, whereby you're saying, I'm not afraid to have a conversation and challenge, or vice versa. I'm open to be challenged, and that's the only way you're going to get something that's exceptional, in terms of. When you're pushing on the value and the worth and everything else, because if you're sitting there constantly going, how much is this costing or whatever else, and what do they really want, you're never going to get the best answer. And just going back to what I said earlier, we are the last to get our hands in the pot, and I would rather let you kick us down the road 12 months, 18 months till you gather your second win, so that you can go in and actually do it right. Because you always want to work off plan, and something which I preach is you have to have a plan. We need to know how it's going to look. We need to know how it's going to feel, and then just devise a plan to get there. Just create that path.
and you guys did it to a T, and obviously it culminated in it being on House of the Year. Still think you were robbed a little bit, but and maybe a little bit of bias there, but I do think you were robbed a little bit in that.
Listen, as I said to Jill, and we still have planned. There's still more stuff we want to do at the house, but ultimately it's been a great experience, and for me it's the next one is that will be House of the Year. That'll be even more. But that it took us to go through this journey. It took us to have these relationships built up. The amazing thing is next time it won't be a case of who do I work with. It's like going, we're ready to go.
Ready to go.
And that's the difference where and I love like even working with my own clients and saying, what's possible? Ask a better question. What is possible? What would be next level? How could we really just change this and make it something exceptional? And you bring out the best in people. Suddenly, people want the best for you in return, because as opposed to going, here he comes and he wants X for a pair of curtains or whatever, and you're like, it's just such short thinking. Whereas like this house is for a lifetime, essentially for a lot of people. It's like make a lifetime decision, something that actually brings the value, because in the long run, what you paid for any part of the house, it's a fraction of its actual ultimate worth and value.
And I do think that is from your guys' perspective. You built that house around you, and I have had clients where they're building a house for the people they're going to sell it to when they decide to move. And they're going to spend 15, 20 years in that property and never feel that they can take ownership of it. So I think that's a very good point. Is everything has to be sort of designed and planned, but specifically for you. But trying to future-proof that, so that take it through the stages of family life, and just making sure that the room designs a flow and you've got the space for everybody in that property, so that they can continue to live through that.
As you say that, it just reminds me, the house that won this year and the House of the Year. Fully deserving. I love it because they were uncompromising in terms of what they wanted, and I stand and salute anyone that says, listen, rather than sort of we'll build it to maximize the resale value, or we'll build it because this is the done thing, or we'll put an extra bedroom just because, and you're like, well, it doesn't make sense, and actually it's not how you are or how you work and all the rest. And how long do you want to live in this limbo land of, we'll do it to maximize the value? It's like, what about maximizing your life? Maximizing how you feel as a family, how you are as a person. Because ironically, your income over 20, 30 years living in that house, a 10, 20, 30% shift in that because you feel better, you love it, it serves you more, pays back tenfold on what the house actually costs. So it's short thinking. When people sort of design for the wrong reasons.
And that is a very important thing for us. Is whenever we put a scheme together, that scheme coming together is actually sort of the end result of quite a difficult process on my part, because I'm trying to get inside your head, which is very difficult, quite dangerous at times as well, inside Judy's head, and try to bring you two together, so that you both are thinking in the same direction rather than going left, right, backwards, forwards, up or down, to be fair. And actually making sure that end result is something that gives you the right feeling. And that feeling, you can take ownership of that. And that's why I wanted you guys involved. Indeed, any clients that I work with, I'm asking, you talk about asking a better question, I'm asking people, what do they not like? And you experience that as well, but what do you not like? Because if I would ask you, what do you like, you will hem and haw, and you'll knock off a few things, if anything. So taking you through that process, well, what do you not like? And then we can sort of establish a look and a feel. And that's then, at the end of that process, that's how we get to that stage. If you're going, that's the one, push the button.
And I do sort of, as you say that, it reminds me back of, I can see how people might be afraid of going with an interior designer, because they might go, listen, I actually don't like their stuff. Right? And it's kind of going, well, why would I employ them? Because I looked at, Instagram or did whatever, and actually that's not my style. And in credit to you, and probably us being honest in terms of, eventually you turn around and go, I don't like it. that's incredibly useful feedback for you.
Yep.
Saying, well, I'll stop presenting,
Yep.
I don't know, tartan checks or whatever, whatever the.
Easy, easy.
I warned you, colours and textiles is not my thing, but that's the thing. But at least as you say, it was like, well, even if you don't know what you do want, let's work out what you don't want. And it might be going, I don't want a granny floral pattern. I don't want this. I don't
Yep.
want this. I don't want this. Well, by very nature of manifestation, it's kind of going, if you rule out the things you don't want, then you're ultimately going to get what you do want.
Yep.
And it's like having that relationship with the likes of yourself and going through and being able to sort of narrow it down. It's like, well, at least the palette's reduced down to something that's in the right region, and then that can help narrow down the options on the flooring and help with the conversation with the kitchen. And before you know it, there's only one obvious answer because you've eliminated all the others.
Yeah.
And
I have talked about that recently where, what I'm now finding is certainly with the amount of information that is available, clients are coming into me almost feeling as if they're meant to have the answers, and it's simply impossible, because there's so many things that are influencing their style, their look, and ultimately we have to look at the property itself, because the architecture does have a certain sway on how the whole thing is going to look, but ultimately it's the client and their taste.
Yeah.
And you're right, you obviously we're in our studio today, and this is just a short section of what's available to us. There's so much out there, and to take, to go to interior designer to get an interior designer's look, that's the wrong way of doing it.
Yeah.
A good interior designer is going to talk to the client and drag that information out of the client.
Yeah.
And that's where we would solely focus on designing with you, as opposed to for you. Yes, we're going to poke you and prod you, and you got poked and prod, maybe beat with a stick a few times.
Quite a few.
Yeah. But we were able to get out.
Yeah.
And I think we really maximised that look and the feeling within that space.
There's genuinely not much more we could do. It's done. And that's it's a beautiful way to be in a house, rather than sort of going, oh yeah, no, we must get around to doing this, or oh yeah, well ultimately we'll do that. And it's like, no, it's like, bar, like I say, a couple of bits of lighting, that's even better. Bar that, it's done.
Yeah.
And it's not, I would argue and say it's not overdone. We haven't sort of got carried away in areas. Like, actually, if anything, our lives have changed in terms, especially having 3 kids, and the kids carry a lot of stuff around, and bring a lot of stuff. But actually, the house enables us to keep it simple and keep it clean and all the rest. And I now use it, and I hadn't intended, but I use it as a business space for having, masterminds and round tables and people at the house, because it's a lovely space to work at. Now that's an unexpected bonus, where previously I would have either, shared offices or worked out outside somewhere else. And now it's nice to know, come to the home here where it's actually, it's part of who we are. I'm proud of it, and so it just has another dimension as well, which again, it's just, it's going to be hard to replace, and I love it for what it is. But like I said, I do have this itch to go again.
Does Julie know about this itch?
She does.
Yeah, she does. Yeah.
She just rolls her eyes generally, walks away. I think the one thing she said, if we do it, and she hasn't shot the idea down. Says if we do it, she wants to have it finished before we moved in. Our moving in was stress.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sort of events happened that actually we had to move in sooner than expected. And the one thing I'd say to any self-builder, when you think you're nearly finished, add on probably 2 months.
Yep.
Then you might just be done. And also, as soon as you move in, everyone moves out. This is the problem. And so suddenly, painters that were happily working away, then suddenly having to paint around you, and next thing you know, they've disappeared to another job, or, builders suddenly are harder to get because they're having to sort of not sort of interfere with you and vice versa. So a bit like that, the longer you stay away, the longer it can be finished to completion, as opposed to being sort of mostly cooked, and still a bit doughy on the inside, so.
No, I get that. Yeah, and again, I've been in this industry 30 years plus.
Yeah.
And I see it all the time,
Yeah.
you know, and I suppose there is that sort of financial stress, that financial element where people are maybe renting a property,
Yeah.
you know, while they're building. You know, some people might be in a fortunate position where they can bridge it, you know. But
To me, that's
ultimately,
down to, when you know better, you do better.
but yeah,
You know, I know next time it's saying, simple thing would be to have extra time on the contract to take the time and saying, listen, it's not about just doing it, it's about get it right.
Yeah.
Quality, get it right first, take the time to move the line, change the thing. And I kind of, sort of acting in terms of going, I believe the right thing happens at the right time. When you get delays, quite often it's going, well, it gives me a chance to make better decisions. You know, we built through COVID and all the things, but actually, when I look back and kind of going, that allowed us the time to make better decisions. It also meant the right people were available. Did it make the whole project longer? Yeah, because it was nearly 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
And then it took another year realistically to get all the teething stuff done. But now I look at it and it's perfect.
Yeah.
You know, it's perfectly imperfect, don't get me wrong, but it's perfect for us.
Yeah, that perfect year looking to go again. Pete, what are you talking about?
Yeah, it's an itch that I can't describe. It's a feeling.
Is it coveting House of the Year now? Is that what it is? You know,
Absolutely, yeah. I want Big Lawrence back again.
Very good. Well, look, Pete, I want to thank you very much for your time today. You know, and that was very insightful to see it from your perspective. You know, and I really appreciate your time. So look, we're going to do quite a few of these interviews, and we will try to get a lot of different people in to have a chat. So stay tuned, and we'll see you next time. Thank you. Thanks, Pete.